Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Welcome to the show today. I am excited to introduce to you Leigh-Anne Andre. She is a mission-driven behavioral healthcare executive, drawing inspiration from Simon Sinek's philosophy that the best leaders are those who dedicate themselves to a purpose greater than themselves. Leanne's approach to leadership is grounded in a deep commitment to making a positive impact on the lives of others. With an extensive educational background, including a master's degree in clinical medical social work from Arizona State University and additional trainings in integrative health and wellness, she brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to her role. Her professional experience spans various positions in the healthcare sector, showcasing her versatility and adaptability. As the Chief Strategy Officer for Exhale Telehealth, Leanne exhibits a strategic mindset and strong ability to shape and execute organizational strategy, with a commitment to personalized patient care, innovative technologies, and evidence-based practices. I think you understand why I've invited Leanne to this conversation. She is disruptive in a natural way, wanting to make that positive impact. Leanne, welcome so much to the conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
I do the fast flyover, right? Can I set the context of who you are and your history and your background? But it's really most impactful for our audience if you tell us a little bit about your story, your journey, how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. So originally I wanted to go straight into business. High school, we did the DECA club, out competing for marketing. And, I was originally going to go that route. And then as an 18-year-old, I took a really swift right-hand turn and decided that, with my very narrow idea of what business marketing was at 18 years old, that I didn't want to have to create something that people would feel they would need to be whole, right? And so that, that kind of put me on my path to, going down social work. I decided I wanted to be a therapist. I feel like my strengths have always been in connecting with people and being able to understand their experiences and relate in a lot of ways for things that they're going through. I think my story is shaped by many mentors and anti-mentors that, have really helped, create the leader in me, create the clinician in me. And I'm grateful to all of that. I think, one of those mentors told me that there was no way I was going to be a counselor, that I needed to go through social work. And that's because I had this rebellious nature already in me, this advocacy that was sort of like built in. And, being a clinical social worker and having that advocacy and that little bit of rebelliousness, I think it was the perfect fit for me. So I did about 6 years in direct practice as a family therapist in an evidence-based program. What I didn't realize I was doing that whole time was because it was such a rigorous evidence-based program, I was learning quality. I was learning process improvement. I was learning how to maintain fidelity to a model. And so that was just caked in with some really, really good supervision. But that supervisor was one of those sort of authoritarian supervisors, I would say. And, it's like she had a group of A+ students and still, it's like your paycheck is your thank you. And so that was really difficult to watch all of us go through that, for myself to experience that. And, when the time came that she was leaving the organization, I actually replaced her as the supervisor. And what that really did for me is it shaped everything I didn't want to be as a supervisor and as a leader for the team. It gave me the idea of what it can be like to have somebody like that that's supervising you, and how that hinders your growth and your progress and your confidence. And so at this point in my life, I just said, what I want to do is create successful, healthy, happy teams, because what's the end goal? To take really good care of the people that we're serving, right? In any kind of behavioral health job, or any, a lot of you have somebody that you're serving in some capacity. And if your staff are miserable and not supported and don't feel confident, that's going to impact the service delivery, right? And so that's where I really started building my leadership skills on, like, being very aware of my staff members, being aware of their strengths and their opportunities, never being afraid to challenge or to have uncomfortable conversations, but in this way that like they know they're supported, they know I care about them, and I'm just trying to help them grow. I'd like to think that that's a way of causing innovation and disruption myself, is to raise innovators and disruptors, have a comfortable atmosphere where they feel like they can speak their minds, they can disagree with me. And that's what you're doing, is you're creating this time where people can come up with their ideas. And I could say like, hey, that wasn't my idea, but that's fantastic, let's see how we can work it in. And that's where innovation comes. So many different strengths at the table. So I really have just moved steadfast up the leadership chain. And like you said, I've worn a lot of hats. I would say, one of the most important mentors to me, my last supervisor, he liked to call me the fireman, because it was sort of like, if there was a fire going on at this agency, sit Leanne to it, and she'll get it taken care of. And I've just gotten to branch out into so many different fields within behavioral health and have that experience and build the overall skills too. It doesn't have to be specific to one type of therapy or one type of program. You're building your leadership skills, you're learning change management. And golly, have I learned change management in the last 4 years. And I really think that that's gotten to me where I am with like having a really, background in quality and process improvement. My primary drive is to provide a good service, right? To make sure that the people we're serving, that we're doing what we tell the community and our stakeholders that we're going to do, to have a job that I believe in, and I believe in the work that I'm doing, is so important. And that's, I think, what makes me that mission-driven leader, and why I have so few jobs on my resume, because I'm dedicated to that, and I really want to see the success of the mission, the success of the company, because what that means is healthy people getting the help that they need, right?
Absolutely. And Leanne, thank you for the depth of that journey, right? Several things jumped out to me. Anti-mentor. I've had them. I've never used the phrase before, and I will absolutely going forward, because it was just perfect. I was like, how have I never used that phrase? But they are the ones where we learn the most, right? Those things,
Right.
those lessons of what not to do are so incredibly powerful. And in that,
Absolutely.
right, the focus and how you're building work and understanding the value of operational effectiveness, that change management, right, and having to take people on that journey through what happens today is not what's going to happen tomorrow, and building
Right.
and baking that into your practice and in each of the roles is so important, because those are the foundational ideas that, and the quality of the process, right? Those are the things that when you get those foundations right, that's how you can grow and scale over time and make what you do repeatable. I love hearing that those are the cores of what you do, because those are the cores of what I do with my clients, is build those
Wonderful.
into the environment and those mindsets. So I absolutely understand where you come from, and I speak your language.
Right,
So,
sister.
yeah, absolutely. With the role at Exhale Telehealth, tell us a little bit about what that mission is, what you're doing, and generally, right, how you're being disruptive to drive that innovation, because you really are.
So I would say that first and foremost, I've spent almost my entire career working with the underserved populations, the people that are struggling to get access to care or access to help or support. It's always been a part of my role to either make sure that service is coming to that person, and that service provides immediate access to care. It's just been a theme throughout my career. And so when we're looking at a telehealth company, when they invited me to do this, I thought, how innovative and disruptive to the market would it be to take something like telehealth, and you could go after commercial insurance or different things like that, but to take that and make it so that you can help some of the underserved populations. And we really kind of have two wings to our company, and one of them is becoming being the outpatient treatment provider for some of these populations, like the homeless, like people in rural areas, or in the Native Americans and the different tribes that have going on. So much of those people need the services where they're at, to be brought to them and to get it right when they need it, right? Because within behavioral health, mental health, when somebody's asking for help, they've already been struggling for a long time typically. You know, most people are not the ones like, hey, you know, I'm starting to feel depressed. I should probably connect with a therapist, or I should probably go see a provider to see if, I might need medications to help get me through this time in my life. You don't see that too often, right? Especially with behavioral health people, we're the worst. But and so when they're asking for help and they come and they're like, here, okay, it's going to be 3 weeks out till you can see a therapist. There's a lot of time to decompensate, and that's a scary time. And that is a time that, they're feeling lost. Things could go downhill really quickly. And so it's important to not only consider the needs of these populations, the cultural needs, the distance, the locations of things, but to also consider that by the time they've gotten to that point, they need an appointment now. And so being able to do that, to serve the underserved in a way that, there's a lot of companies don't want to work in some of these populations because the revenue is not going to be as big, right? And it's not ever going to be a focus on revenue, but you need to keep your company afloat, especially when you're doing a startup company like we are. And so it's been really cool to be working with the team on, engaging the different municipalities, the elected officials, grants, different things like that, so we could see how we can really serve that mission and be able to bring it to the table. Another way that we're able to help people is that, for certain behavioral health agencies that are looking to grow and expand, or they, the need and the demand for behavioral health since COVID has skyrocketed. At least it's been a lot more normalized to talk about, which is really exciting. And I think people are seeking more services that way. And so the demand is growing, and we can't, necessarily keep up with it. We can also provide services to these agencies where we can embed ourselves and be able to provide service to them while they're, going through those growing pains, or while they need that support, so that they can really expand, have bigger access to grant opportunities, etc. But with Exhale, what makes me really excited is that I'm sort of with this mission driven team, and I think a lot of people would say that they're mission driven. I think that there's a passion there that really needs to come with that descriptor. And I've got this team that I'm working with that everybody really wants to provide a good service. People are really committed to helping those who struggle the most and don't necessarily have the access that they need to get that support. And so it's like a think tank every day of these individuals coming together and how we can be creative and how we can problem solve around these things.
There are so many things in there that you're working on and the impacts that they've had, right? You talked a little bit about the normalization of mental health care coming out of the pandemic, and the access to underserved communities in rural communities on the reservations with the different tribes. There aren't clinics where people can go, and there aren't people sitting there waiting. And if there happen to be people live and in person, they are so overbooked that care is hard to come by. So this fills a really immediate need nationally. And I'm assuming, I'll make the big assumption, right, that this is a global need, but we're working here in the country, right, and to address that in a way that access to care in this space is, I need it now, because the person, when they're right, saying and willing to admit that, the suffering that has already happened is huge. You're and correct. For many, right, there's a level of potential desperation in that. And then to get the, oh, you can't be seen for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's just devastating. And so I respect and have the utmost support for what you're trying to accomplish, because we know that our underserved communities are actually bigger populations than our metro areas, and we just don't see them.
Yeah, and it's harder to get out there to serve them and to provide culturally appropriate services as well. And I think that's where my strength as a social worker, kicks in for this company as well, is that, we're not the type that's going to say, okay, like, we know how to serve the homeless, we know how to serve the tribes. Like, it's going to be a listening and learning situation. And how do our strengths and how are the things that we're geared to do to help, how does that fit in with your culture? And how can we best help you? Because it's not a one size fits all for those things.
And to kind of tie together a thought that you shared in your journey, right? In bringing teams of people together to have the great ideas and do all of that, right? This idea, I call it, right, the spirit of experimentation, right? Get lots of ideas, experiment, test, and see what they're doing. And now you're also, right, weaving into that the voice of your customer, right? What is that the patient want?
Absolutely.
And through all of that, you're building inside of your business that ability to continuously adapt.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And that is absolutely fabulous. And so knowing that you're doing that, right, I am willing to make some assumptions, and I'm going to let you validate for me.
Okay.
That there are things that you and your team have tried along the way that may not have worked out real well, or there are challenges that you faced that you had to figure out and test and figure out ways around and through those obstacles. Will you tell us a little bit about some of those moments?
Sure. And actually that's been throughout my career. I could tell you that, when I got my first director role, I feel like I was spoiled with this team and in my last company that everybody came together without ego, with the idea to help different disciplines all in the same room, which when you're in behavioral health and you do that, it's not always, that's not always something you see. We would sit in there and we would do root cause analyses together. We would problem solve. We would bring staff in. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing, is that you think you need to be in this big think tank with a bunch of executives or leaders, and chances are you're going to get it wrong, and with the best of intentions, you're going to get it wrong. And then you're going to try to implement something and the staff are like, why did you not ask us? And so I had a wonderful mentor that really taught me about bringing staff in to help in those conversations. And it was like we would get in a room and we would get stuff out and we would respect each other and we'd have boundaries for our disciplines. We always came out with a plan, and it was the strength and the glory of the team. It wasn't about an individual person's glory, and so we'd get out there and we would implement and we would be creative and we would try things to see what worked and what didn't work. That team has always been a very special team to me because it really taught me, like, no matter how different the things you're managing are, you can find ways to come together for the same cause. When it comes to Exhale, when we're a startup, the funding, to come up with the funding for those things, you have to be creative. And so they'd be like, what, this is a population we really want to serve. This is what, it's going to look like for us with overhead and cogs and, everything like that going on. So, we have to think of how can we serve our mission? How can we get this done? And we just have some really cool talent and some really cool connections. And honestly, I've met some really incredible elected officials in Phoenix that have a lot of passion for it too. So we're really drumming through some of that. There's a lot of passion on the team. My CEO is a very passionate person too. At the end of the day, we're working through things. We're coming together because we're all mission driven.
When you stop and look at where you are and where you want to be in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, what does the future state for Exhale really look like?
Where I would love to see us is that we have, our outpatient up and set up, and that we are serving community members that didn't get that direct access to care or didn't have culturally responsive care, to be able to help them and start really embedding into what it takes to help that population. For me, I love the idea of working with the homeless because I used to come from crisis. My last job was crisis receiving. And so, we see what that looks like when they don't get that immediate care, that they start to decompensate. They start to treat themselves with drugs and alcohol, because they don't have access to that medication, or there's stigma around that. And they came to us at my last place of employment. And I want to get before that, like the more proactive you can be, the less decompensation that can happen for somebody, the better chances that they're not going to end up in jail or in a higher level of care like a psychiatric hospitalization. If you can get them maybe when they come to the shelter and see if they're interested in services, if medications are appropriate, to get those medications on day one and started, you're going to save this person a lot of grief, a lot of trauma, different traumas that can happen through that whole process. And then they're hopefully going to be in a better place to receive help and care, to go through that process of finding transitional housing, finding permanent housing, staying, on their treatment plan and following those goals. So it's just another way that we can come and help there. I also really love the idea of organizations that are growing and spreading and bringing their good care to, new markets. It's a really big time for mental and behavioral health right now. The grant funding that is out there, the emphasis with our government, there's a lot of support. And I think that's really coming out of how the pandemic has affected us as a society, and if we had, mental health issues and we were still able to kind of like truck on by and keep going, pandemic smashed all that. I got to be one of the essential workers where you're not just working your 40-hour weeks anymore. You're working 50, 60 hours a week, meetings on the weekends, writing pandemic plans. We all had the rug pulled from under us. And so I love that there's this support and emphasis now and this, these grant funds and opportunities that are coming out to help these people spread the work that they're doing. We're not a brick and mortar at this time. And so to be able to go and help them and support them through, taking what my values are about how to value staff, how to invest in them, how to invest in their training, how to give them the support that they need, that we're going to have a happy team, a happy team of different providers that can, fit in and adjust to that change. Like you were saying, it's evolving, and you're going to build different skills working in different areas. So I would say to be in those areas, plus having a strong team. And I think one of my exciting challenges here is, how do I bring a team together? How do I ensure that they get the support and supervision that they need? How do I make them feel like they are a team in telehealth when there is no brick and mortar, right? I can't just walk around the building and check in on people. So I've got a lot of ideas rattling around to do those kinds of things as well. And I really love this new level of challenge for myself.
That's beautiful. And in talking about that, right, you shared the ideas that being able to provide services earlier in a person's journey of need, right? The impact to the individual is huge.
Right.
But it also, for the overall system of treatment, it minimizes and mitigates the amount that they're going to need, right? If you can
absolutely
get them early on before an patient scenario is required, right? That saves everybody headache cost and quality of life for the patient. And, as you're talking about the lack of brick and mortar and that there's freedom that comes in that, right? A clinician can provide services without any boundaries, right? Being on telehealth, right? As we escalate through different levels of care, an individual based on the East Coast, as example, can treat in, other parts of the country. I'm sure there are licensing issues and things that you have
exactly reciprocity and thing that you have to work through. But yes, exactly. You're correct there.
And so an individual with great skills has the impact on a much broader group of patients because we aren't constrained by geography. Exactly. And that is one of the most amazing things about telehealth in the mental health field, I think, right, is access to the quality and the level of care in a way that I don't know has ever been there before.
Right. And if you treat your employees well, you value your employees, you're also mitigating turnover. And I think that is an impact on quality. If somebody has made a connection to their provider, to their therapist, and then that person leaves, and that happens, turnover is natural, but you create strong, happy, healthy teams that feel supported and feel like they're being invested in, and you get people who stay.
I respect your commitment to your team and the idea of building a happy, functioning, healthy team, right? Because that feeds into the continuum of care. I love to have conversations that are patient-centric, and everything that you're doing is about providing the care for the patient, but you've added on that layer of making sure that the team is whole and healthy also, right? And so that, just from my perspective, I see that as an exponential leap in how you're building a model for your business to thrive.
Thank you.
Right, mitigating turnover, having the team grow and evolve collectively, the care and the continuation of care for the patients, and having their providers with them, right? All of those impacts are upping the level of the experience. in really tangible and meaningful ways. Leanne, I'm so excited. Thank you for sharing all of that story with us
Oh, absolutely.
and the
Thank
vision
you.
of all of that. Exhale is based in Arizona,
Right.
and you are working on providing services across state lines. So this really is, you are working for a national footprint. Am I?
Absolutely. Yes. And I think that, like you were discussing earlier, that's the beauty of telehealth, that you can have individuals from all over the country, like you said, there's red tape to get through for some of those things, but it's not the worst, and be able to provide those services. I also think it's important when you're being culturally responsive that if you're working, with a tribe in Washington versus a tribe in Arizona, you're going to want to get providers and practitioners that are familiar with those tribes in Washington. You know what I mean? So the ability to kind of manage that and be able to give that level of service.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful model. And prior to the pandemic, that idea of fighting through the red tape to break down the reciprocity issues, I
Mhm.
think was seen as a showstopper, right? I think that there was a tremendous amount of, oh, that's just way too much.
Yep.
But as we've come out of the pandemic and we had to break through those barriers, simply because we had to, right? The
Yes.
willingness and the ability to make those relationships work, I would hope for you, is a little bit easier than it could have been in years gone by.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I would even have said pre-pandemic that I don't know how well telehealth can work, guys. How do you build that trust? How do you build that rapport over the phone or over a computer? That's a big part of like what I've been taught and educated on. And I think that that's what brings a unique challenge for me here. And I have a lot of creative ideas about that of like, how do you help your staff work in different ways to engage in a different platform than just the people who are traditionally used to doing in-person visits. How do we break through and find some strategies like deep motivational interviewing training, for them, things that are going to have that patient drive the treatment, and we're going to be at pace with them and really acknowledge where they're at and provide the care for where they're at in their journey, as opposed to trying to push it or thinking that we have the answers for all of that. And so that's part of my challenge in working with telehealth too.
Absolutely wonderful. The future and what you're building, I think, is going to have a huge impact on people. And I know that that's at the heart of what you're striving to accomplish. As members of the audience are listening to this, where can they learn more about you and Exhale?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Leigh-Anne Andre. Pretty easy to find, strange spelling for a name. So I'll pop right out. Exhale Telehealth, it's www.exhaletH.com. Please reach out with any questions or anything like that. I, would love to field any questions that you might have for us.
Outstanding. And Leanne, I like to wrap up with kind of a more personal question, just a little bit more about
Sure.
who you are. So what's your favorite way to unwind at the end of the day?
Well, that could go two ways. I'd say I love my friends and I have wonderful friends and, companions in my life. And so sometimes just calling it a day and ending up going to catch a happy hour and get a glass of wine and eat a snack. It's just the way to kind of like close the door on a hard day and, just relax a little bit. The other one that's just as beautiful is if I'm home alone. I do have two precious children, but if I'm home alone, then going right up to take a hot shower, getting comfy clothes right away, and find something good on Netflix to watch.
Well, and right, that's fabulous, right? Feeding the social need and then feeding the solitary need. We need all of those experiences in
In
our life.
balance, yes.
Yes, absolutely. All right, audience, we had a wonderful conversation, really looking at how to be patient centric, but layering on that care of our team so that what we're building is a holistic type of a solution. I am so thrilled that we had this conversation with Leanne today. Thank you for being here. And audience, don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Every single week, one lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win the grand prize drawing, a $15,000 private VIP day with Lisa Levy. And be sure to head over to disruptandinnovate.com and get your free copy of Lisa's gift. And join us on our next episode.